Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the Littoral Combat Ship again because it's gotten worse. All right, just to be clear, there's still two different types of Littoral Combat Ship. There's the Freedom class and there's the Independence class. Today we're just going to talk about the Independence class, okay? Not talk about the Freedom class anymore. The Freedom class is being decommissioned. It's going away. It's still our problem. They're still building them things, but they're going to be decommissioned, all of them by the end of next fiscal year, but they're still building them. So I don't know what the one that they just built, but they haven't commissioned yet. I don't know if we're keeping that one, but all the other ones that we built, like 9, I think, they're all going away by the end of next year. Okay. But we're not talking about Freedom this time. We're talking about Independence class. The remaining LCS class has a design flaw that limits its operation. We'll get into it. It's bad. Okay, Independence. Let's a little disclaimer here. I'm not a journalist. I'm a guy on YouTube, man. I go out on the Googleator and I find interesting facts like what we're talking about today and bring them to you. Okay, but the real journalists, the people that do the investigative reporting, those people are from the Navy Times, Jeff Zizowisk, and I probably screwed up his name. Sorry about that, Jeff. And also from the WarZone. Yeah, all the people we know over at Tyler Rogaway's WarZone, Emma Helfrich and Oliver Parkin, among many other outlets now, are running with this story at the time that I'm recording this video. So it's probably going to be all over the newsosphere by the time you read this. But we're talking about this specific Independence class under the LCS program has this problem. So what is the problem? Well, the Independence class hull is cracking. When she goes to sea, sailors are saying, hey, that shouldn't be there. There's a freaking crack in the deck. And they're like, there's another one over there. There's cracking on level 1 on both the port and starboard side, near frames 35 to 36 and frames 45 on multiple ships. So this is a weak area in the design of the ship. And it's happening in a very inconvenient place to repair. It's where the shell plate meets the deck plate. And I've tried to illustrate that with this photo here, with one red arrow showing you the deck plate, the second red arrow showing you where the shell plate meets the deck plate. Now these frames, just so you're understanding this, are counted from the bow being frame 1 to the stern. So frame 35, 36, and 45 are well back from the bow. But as we're looking from the bow, looking sternwards on this picture, you can see the approximate location of frame 35 and 36 there where I have the arrows. And then 10 frames deeper is another crack in the deck where these ships apparently are just ripping themselves apart. This aluminum alloy hull that they have isn't strong enough to withstand the pressures that happen whenever you take this ship to sea. And that is a major, major problem. I've deduced by reading multiple sources that at the time of detection, which happened in 2019, the cracks were less than 6 inches long. Okay, and we'll get to how they are now in 2022 in just a minute. But one of the first things that happened was NAVSEA Systems representative, this is a spokesperson, Alan Baraboo, came out and said, listen, the damage that's being reported today is on 6 of the 13 Independence class. So it's not all of them, but you know what it is? It's enough to say that, hey, this class has a design problem, and how much longer will it be before the rest of them see this? He also said that this was first detected in 2019. They've been working on it since. The cracks are less than 6 inches across the deck, located on the frames we talked about. And then he says, it does not endanger sailors' lives because it is above the waterline. And this is where I decided I needed to make a video, because a sailor's life is endangered by simply going to sea on a ship that works. If a ship is cracking itself in half in multiple places, that's endangering the sailor's life unnecessarily due to a design flaw. And he also went on to say, Mr. Alan Baraboo said, does not impede operations. This is bullshit. It does. Because now we have the USS Omaha LCS 12's temporary standing order. Let's see what that captain of the USS Omaha that's suffering from these structural defects and cracks in the deck on level 1. Let's see what the captain says. Now, this standing order was written on July 8th, 2021. there are limits as to how long a temporary standing order can be, and that's why it has a cancellation date. But don't think that this temporary standing order is no longer valid because it's after the cancellation date. There is a clause in this standing order saying that this standing order will stand and be renewed over and over again until the fix is implemented by NAVSEA and the intermediate maintenance facilities. But how is the USS Omaha impacted by these cracks? Well, according to the captain's temporary standing order, the ship's operation is restricted to 15 knots in sea states up to sea state 4. This is a ship that was lauded at going 40 plus knots. There's an unconfirmed report it might do 50. And this one doesn't have the combining gear problem, which means it can actually do those speeds in short bursts, right? Very good for a ship with this kind of mission. But now we're limiting that ship to 15 knots. Yeah, it's like a cargo ship now in any sea state. And the thing that blew my mind is look at sea state 5. The very next thing, it says no operation in sea state 5 or greater. I have never in a 20-year Navy career seen a temporary standing order that says thou shall not operate in a sea state of any type 5 or greater. That means if it's stormy weather outside and got some waves picking up and the wind is greater than, say, 12 or more knots, you can't go to sea. And if you're at sea and you see a storm coming on the horizon, well, you better get the hell out of there. This is impacting operation and where we can operate based on the weather. He says it doesn't impede operations. We can't go to sea in stormy seas with this new problem. It is most definitely impacting operations. So what are the immediate actions? What are we doing here? This is the inside of the bow, looks like aft there. Anyway, so there's going to be crew inspections every day on these cracks, and they're going to mark them, okay, and keep an eye on them, make sure they're not growing, right? They're going to go into extended availability to fix these because the problem is where it is, where the shell plate, which is like reinforced and load bearing, obviously, meets the deck plate. That's not a simple fix. You can't just throw another piece of metal on that and be like, it's good, because that piece of metal is going to crack too. The problem is an engineering problem, so they need to remove or reinforce the parts that are defective in the design in a very special way, and that could require dry docking. They may not be able to do that pier side. They don't know, and they haven't announced it at this point as to how that's going to happen. But I'll tell you this, the Omaha, who was in San Diego, was supposed to go to her maintenance facility to fix this in October 2021, and she couldn't. She was delayed until November. Do you know why? Because of stormy weather. She couldn't go from an American port up the West Coast to another American port because of poor weather. That's how severely impacted LCS operations are because of this defect. It's insane. So what's the fault? According to the USS Omaha's temporary standing order, it is an under-design structural defects, more than one, multiple structural defects. And like we said, 6 of the ships are confirmed. 6 of the 13 of this particular littoral ship class are affected. And they've been constructed by a company, an Australian shipbuilding company that builds ships here in the United States as well as Australia, called Austal, specifically Austal US, Austal Limited US. Anyway, so again, we're talking about the ship on the right, the one that I've highlighted, not the one on the left. The one on the left is the Freedom class, and that's going to be decommissioned. They're gone. But just to go over their problems again, because we keep seeing this pop up all the time now, is on the left, multi-mission modules are now permanent. The idea was there would be flexibility in these ships where they could go from an ASW mission to a surface combat mission to a special forces support mission, and they would be able to swap out those modules within a single day in port. And that turned out to not even be practical over multiple days. So what they did now is they made the multi-mission modules permanent. Therefore, if you have the surface warfare module, that's all you do. You don't change that ever because we don't have time. We don't have the logistics to change it. They completely canceled the ASW module, as we covered previously on this channel, because the towed array was unstable. It flopping around back there like a fish hook. The ASUW module is incomplete on a lot of builds because the ASU, the anti-surface warfare module, includes the new strike missile. Not all of them have the strike missile launchers yet, even though they're credited as having the ASUW module. The combining gear limits their speed for the Freedom class to 18 knots, and apparently we're not even going to bother fixing that anymore because we're just decommissioning these things anyway. And it is a design defect. In other words, these ships never had a chance. This wasn't a screw up in a shipyard. This wasn't a screw up by a sailor. This was done on a drawing board in a CAD program by an engineer, not engineering the combining gear properly. And they're all going to go away by the end of next year. All right. Again, we're not even talking about those. We're just rehashing. Let's talk about the LCS ships that we were trying to keep operational. And at this point, we're still going to keep them operational, but let's just see how long that actually lasts. Again, their multi-mission modules are permanent. Their corrosion over dissimilar metals is a problem with the center line where the power plant is. Because it is an aluminum alloy, composite metal, if you will, they saw excessive corrosion where they didn't expect it. So the Navy's been battling that for years. That's really not a new problem. But what is a new problem is this hull cracking that they've managed to keep secret for 3 years, but now it's coming out, limiting the speeds of these ships to 15 knots until they sort out how they're going to fix this stuff. And it cannot operate in sea states 5 or above. You have to pull in. You have to go to port. And then if you get trapped at sea, there are emergency procedures where you slow down to like 10 knots and you bob around like a cork until the storm passes, hoping your ship doesn't break in half. My God. So let me tell you about Osto Limited real quick. This is from their earnings and net profit after taxes report from August of 2021. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I highlighted a few points you might find interesting. One, last year was their second highest gross revenue year in the company's history. And it was also the second largest net profit after taxes in the company's history, coming in after taxes at $81 million, right? The chief executive officer, Patty Gregg, said, quote, "I'm very pleased that Ostel has delivered strong profit and earnings as strengthening our position to unlock significant long-term opportunities in shipbuilding industry and a broader defense sector." Let's go on to the next point. A strong earnings before income tax result, despite a reduction in almost 25% of revenue, was predominantly driven by enhanced shipbuilding margins, particularly in the USA. End quote. In other words, despite having less revenue from everything else going on in the company, because they made so much money from the United States in shipbuilding, they actually saw an increase in revenue to the second largest in the company's history. The shipbuilding margin from Austral USA was 10.4%, an increase from 8.1% the previous year. Margin is profit, ladies and gentlemen. That's how much you're taking off the top. So for every $450 million ship that they build, they keep $45 million in profit after taxes. Okay. Ostel is investing in significant USA shipbuilding with construction of a steel factory facilities in Mobile, Alabama, which is being 50% funded by the U.S. government upon an agreed upon maximum of up to $50 million. What a great business plan. Build a factory and get the U.S. government to pay for half of it. We're paying for half of their facilities in Mobile, Alabama, of this factory anyway. Now, Austral isn't just good at negotiating contracts with the U.S. government to pay for half of their facilities. They're also good at negotiating the contract for constructing these ships, where the cost increases, any additional funds that they didn't budget for, are shared with a 50-50 split with the U.S. Navy up to a ceiling price. And in 2016, that happened. They had to write off, as a work in progress for accounting terms, $115 million to reinforce LCS-6, the third ship that they were building, because that was the first ship actually going through shock trials. So $115 million was used to reinforce that hull. Well, now there is an investigation about that. So on February 22nd of this year, the Austral USA president resigned over that $115 million loss, of which was only 50% of the cost, by the way. The U.S. Navy paid for the other half of that. $115 million loss tied to the Independence class. They're under investigation right now by the Department of Justice, the SEC, and the Australians' version of the SEC. And what's the claim for this $150 million loss? They're like, hey, we had to do additional work. So whenever we did the shock trials, the ship didn't break in half. And they're still building them. And they're cracking in half at sea. Look, I was just trying to come up with something to wrap this up. I don't know what else to tell you, folks. This is a grift. They clearly potentially pocketed a lot of money here. This rebase trajectory is what embezzlement looks like. This is why it's being investigated. And the sad part is not only taxpayers being fleeced, and the U.S. government is negotiating away so much money to an Australian construction company to build a factory in Mobile. I'm really more upset about the condition of the ships they're building. You know, and to claim to have NAVC, a representative from the United States NAVC Systems Command, say that they're not putting sailors' life at risk is just ridiculous. And so, anyway, if this video is interesting to you, I'm going to go a little bit deeper and come out with names. And I'm talking about engineers, lobbyists, admirals, congressmen from the mid 1990s to today. And if that's something you like, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know that you want to see a follow-up to this, and we'll see how deep the rabbit hole goes. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.